Hey all, welcome back to the daily readouts, and we are reading Legends of Pensam by Mamang Dai. So today I'm reading The Road, subchapter 2. So let's get started. From the houses furthest up the hill in Duyang, the town of Pigo, the oldest settlement in the region, is a few scattered rooftop seen through patches of dense vegetation. The first men and women who came here had started their journey from the mountains and walked through the forest carrying bamboo flares. They followed the green and silver vein of river, convinced that it was the only road that would lead them to a destination. At a point opposite the spot that would later become Pico, they stopped. They stared across the water and saw how the land was level and fertile. They cut plantain stems and lashed them together into rafts to get across. This was the origin of Pigo as a small landing stage on the right bank of the river. It was a magical place. To the south, the hill flattened and sank into the land of unknown strangers. But to the north and east, the hills sloped gently and ranged themselves row upon row, as if to shield the fertile land from the wild mountains from where they had come. Orange trees grew here, the bamboo was young and rain washed, and all the families who arrived moved in a daze of wonderment, exploring the streams and rocks, memorizing the green stillness, and walking through the forest, following the same paths where the elephants wandered, remembering their ancient roots. Much later, Pico became the first choice of the British officers in the area, and for a while, it was the only town in the region with starred roads and concrete buildings and electricity and daily bazaars. The villagers at the far edge of the Duyang clusters, however, from where the domain of the tallest hill and the most secret mountain began, had little connections with Pigo. They remained mysterious and remote even long after the British left. They were beyond time till the road come. The village had never heard of anything like it before. Their granary doors had been broken and all their precious beads and jewels stolen. It had happened at night. The thunderstruck victim could not imagine how anyone could have done a thing. It is like the work of spirits. Maybe it was the spirits. Who else would do such a thing? Don't blame the spirits. Only man do such things. In these villages, the granaries were grouped together and built on stilts with a heavy circular piece of wood like a wheel attached to every post. This was to keep the rats out. All the grains for the year was stored here. The wealth of a family in the form of old beads, brass bracelets, marriage gifts, and huge urns of beaten metal were also stashed away from the mounds of rice, millets, and maize. Never in living memory had anyone tampered with these houses. The granary was scared property and it was taboo to enter one without the consent of the owner. Doors were simply jammed shut with a bamboo stick, and only recently had a few families taken to locking them. If not the spirits, then who? It could be anyone. The village seemed to stop breathing. The clear air shimmered, and the long house shone like crouched monoliths with their fridge of wild plantain neatly trimmed over the narrow doorways. From her dark door, Isam jangled a bunch of iron keys. Everything is gone, she called out, but they didn't break the lock. They pulled out the planks. What is happening to our village? This was the last village on the administrative map. Anyone looking at the hill from the highest point in it would see the river coiled like a shimmering snake in the still green jungle beyond, which rose a forbidding note of mountains. It was a landscape out of a dream. And though an unlocker might pause and get his bearings, sooner or later the impenetrable vastness would trouble his thoughts. Across the river, the white sandbanks stretched and narrowed. Before they were swallowed by the darkness, were spiked bamboos stuck in silent columns. The village had moved to its own quiet rhythm for centuries, with old certainties and beliefs. But the road was changing all that. It had never over a year now, and the road was still being built. It ran up the mountain like a broken ladder of crumbling earth stained with iron ore. The rat gash turned in great loops and bends and plunges into the heart of the far mountains, trying to reach the scattered village buried deep in the land of mist and wild chestnuts. Very few local took these ragged roads. People had heard of the mad women who appeared by the streams, made a red by the gouged out earth, and threw bites of shales and rock at travellers. There was also whisper that the road was inauspicious. Everyone believed in the story of the red pool, the color of the blood, where ghostly fish swam round and round, wearing bells that tinkled and drove strong men to act of murderous violence. In the summer rain, the road was crushed under falling rocks and boulders. The villagers clambered over them and laughed loudly, wading through the sticky red mud. What a place! At this rate, we will never see progress. I promise you a road by the end of the year, Duan, son of Kedu, had said. He was a young man whose name had brought recognition to the village as the home of the youngest elected member to the state assembly. There was no doubt about his sincerity to serve his people. He had spoken with convictions, and the village had listened, eager and happy in his victory. For it was true that till now their villages had exerted its presence only in rather dubious way, like the time when 8 children had died of measles. Brought the villagers were convinced by visitors from the town. Another distinction of the place was the old school, acknowledged by one and all as the first school established in this region. So that's all, my dear. Tomorrow we'll meet soon. If you like the channel, please subscribe it. Bye bye. Take care.